The National Desk, America's News Now.
This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. Great to be here with you. On this weekend edition, we take a look at the big headlines of the week and a look ahead at what to expect, starting with the 4 big stories we've been following all week. First, a better than expected inflation report, giving Wall Street a boost. But what does the bigger picture look like for everyday Americans? The one expense you can't live without that's only getting more expensive. And it was one of the top campaign issues for Democrats, the threat to democracy, how it played out this election cycle. Plus, former President Donald Trump expected to announce his intent to run for president. But how many Republican voters want that? What the polls say. And later on, big tech making big job cuts. Experts detail what the troubling trend means for other industries. New inflation data came in better than expected. The October Consumer Price Index showed the annual inflation rate dropped to 7.7%. That's down from 8.2% in September. The news sent Wall Street into a major rally. Does it all signal a recession could be avoided? The National Desk's Atra El-Nashar explains how experts are trying to predict the future of our economy.
A sigh of relief and renewed hopes inflation may have peaked came Thursday in what some economists call the best inflation report of the year. For the first time since April, both measures of the Consumer Price Index, headline inflation, meaning prices for all items, and core inflation, which doesn't factor in volatile food and energy prices, came down year over year.
The light at the end of the tunnel is growing bigger and bigger and bigger.
That light being what economists call a soft landing, returning to normal inflation levels without slowing the economy into a recession. But more data is needed to tell us if Thursday's report is the beginning of the end of the worst inflationary period in decades or an anomaly before prices spike again.
Really volatile groups of food and energy still incredibly high over last year. And for consumers that are out there wanting to go shopping for Thanksgiving, for example, they're going to still feel it.
Grocery prices still 12.4% higher than last year, many having to cut back.
Instead of buying gallons of milk, I get the little half a gallons. And, instead of getting a dozen of eggs, I get a half a dozen.
This Thanksgiving, turkey may be out of the question for some. It's about 17% more expensive than last year. And avian flu compounding already high prices. This Alabama food bank seeking alternatives for the 9,000 people they plan to feed.
We're going to be serving more chickens than ever before. We also were fortunate to be able to secure some hams.
Another source of persistent pain is the cost of housing.
The shelter is up in its highest level since 1990, and we've repeatedly heard that from a lot of Americans that have said rent is too high.
And mortgage rates are likely to keep rising with more interest rate hikes from the Federal Reserve, members of which are no doubt encouraged by this inflation report, but still have a long road ahead to get inflation down to their 2% target. In Washington, I'm Atra El-Nashar for the National Desk, America's News Now.
And with everything costing more, Americans seem to be increasingly relying on their credit cards. Newly released numbers from the Federal Reserve show Americans borrowed another $25 billion in September, increasing by a seasonally adjusted annual rate of 6.4%. While it would normally be considered a big jump, economists expected worse, having projected $30 billion. Here's the breakdown right here on your screen. Revolving debt, which includes credit cards, that grew by 8.7%, and non-revolving credit, auto loans, student loans, etc., that was up 5.7%. Mortgage demand stayed flat at the beginning of the month as interest rates hit an average 7.14%. According to the Mortgage Bankers Association, mortgage demand rose 1% after 6 weeks of declines. That's still down 41% compared to this time last year and is close to a 7-year low. As rents and mortgage rates rise, some Americans are looking for alternative living arrangements. Co-living allows complete strangers to rent a room, share common areas, and then split the cost of rent. Many people would agree housing is the biggest part of their budget. Experts say more people of all ages are choosing to live in shared spaces. This in response to a housing shortage and rising housing costs. Will Adams knows about co-living. He tells me he lived with two strangers, splitting the $1,600 rent 3 ways. He tells me he's a single father who tried to become a homeowner but was outbid, and co-living became the only option.
Trying to become a homeowner is a big deal, and so you have to work on your credit. When you finally get there, and then you still realize that to get where you're at now, you got to do so much more, or you got to have so much more money to put down. So it's very disheartening.
As we have more housing supply, it will lessen some of the housing costs. So the solution is about increasing supply, and increasing supply.
And that was National Association of Realtors Chief Economist Lawrence Yoon. He says in some expensive cities like New York and San Francisco, it's fairly normal to see cohabitation. He says what's unusual is this is spreading to more parts of the country as home prices continue to rise. A new sign that the high cost of plane tickets may be discouraging travelers. Flight bookings for the holidays are down. New Adobe Analytics data shows domestic flight bookings the week of Thanksgiving are down 7% compared to 2019. That's 17% for Christmas travel. The data also shows that ticket prices have increased 24% from October 2019 to October 2022. Bring it on. The U.S. Postal Service says it's ready for the holiday crush. Postmaster General Louis DeJoy said the agency gave a solid performance delivering mail-in ballots for the midterm elections. DeJoy added that the Postal Service has stabilized its workforce and is ready for its next challenge of delivering holiday cards and packages. Going beyond the podium now, political leaders and some candidates warning of a democracy in peril. Was that reflected in this week's elections? The National Desk, Christine Frizzau, takes a closer look.
Make no mistake, democracy is in the ballot for all of us.
Throughout the midterm campaign, it was a repeated refrain, especially from Democrats.
I think a vote tomorrow is a vote to defend our democracy.
Warnings sent about what might happen on Election Day.
There are 50% of Americans have election deniers on the ballot.
But many of those candidates painted as election deniers lost. But instead of fighting the results, sent statements like this from Michigan gubernatorial candidate Tudor Dixon, saying she called Governor Whitmer to concede. Lee Zeldin congratulating New York Governor Hochul on her election to a full 4-year term. And Dr. Mehmet Oz sending well wishes to John Fetterman and his family, both personally and as our next U.S. Senator. The New York Times even reported concessions are making a comeback. As concerns about voter intimidation and updates to voting bills in states like Arizona, Texas, and Georgia,
Jim Crow 2.0
didn't appear to stifle turnout. But there are questions about what could have happened down the road had some of those candidates won, and what to expect from candidates in still undecided races, some of whom are voicing election concerns.
The system we have right now does not work. We, the people, deserve to know on election night the winner and the loser.
But with the investigation into the attack at the U.S. Capitol still underway, political analysts say it's not only a legitimate concern, but one that likely helped drive some voters to the polls.
We know that high turnout tends to help Democrats. People tend to vote when they're angry or scared, and so the Democrats are saying this stakes are super high. You've got to come out and vote.
With votes still being counted in some parts of the country, in others, a sigh of relief. And most systems worked as they should. I'm Christine Frizzau, reporting for the National Desk, America's News Now.
Christine, thank you. Republicans are looking for a way forward after a worse than expected midterm election. Our fact check team looks at what could be in store for the future of the GOP.
Former President Trump has teased about a big announcement next week, possibly another run for the White House. But is the Republican Party looking elsewhere for a leader? I'm back with Courtney and Connor from the Fact Check team. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis getting lots of attention after winning re-election with a nearly 20-point margin. Big win. But Connor, that's not the only thing his supporters are highlighting, right?
Right. Another fact that they're looking at is that he's the first candidate to turn Miami-Dade County red since Jeb Bush did it in 2002. He also brought more Latino voters into the GOP camp, and all of this sets him up to be an ideal candidate for the Republican Party in 2024.
And things are heating up. There's already a rivalry there between him and Donald Trump, who's taking some shots at the governor, recently calling him Ron DeSanctimonious. An early indication of who voters are leaning towards here?
Well, we looked into some CNN polls to figure this out, and we found that 33% of Florida voters said they want Trump as president, but 45% say they want DeSantis. But to be fair, that poll is in the governor's state, but we found another one, and this one's from the New York Times, and it found that the Republican Party is split over whether they want Trump to run again, but DeSantis is the most popular alternative.
And there could be some other names as well, some others rising through the ranks of the Republican Party. Courtney, who are they?
Right, that same New York Times poll shows the other top two candidates include Ted Cruz and Mike Pence, but they are way behind DeSantis and Trump. And another governor that voters are considering is Greg Abbott, who just defeated Beto O'Rourke for Texas governor. However, he and his advisors have publicly dismissed the idea of a presidential run. The bottom line here is that as of now, the two most popular choices among voters are still Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis.
For now. We'll see how everything changes next week when that big announcement comes from Donald Trump. Ladies, thank you. Head on over to thenationaldesk.com for more on this and links to where the Fact Check team found all of their supporting information.
South Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, and Washington, D.C. are reporting the highest amount of influenza-like illnesses in the country, according to the latest CDC data. In Alabama, it's widespread. The state's Department of Public Health showing all 8 health districts are reporting significant flu activity and outbreaks. At this time last year, only 3 health districts there even reported lab-confirmed flu cases. The CDC estimates there have been at least 1.6 million cases so far this year, ahead of the typical December peak. A federal judge in Texas struck down President Biden's student loan forgiveness program, ruling it's illegal. Last month, conservative group, the Job Creators Network Foundation, filed the lawsuit on behalf of 2 borrowers who didn't qualify for debt relief. The program was already on hold following a ruling by the 8th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in a separate legal challenge. Some business leaders warning a new proposal from the Biden administration could be a blow to gig workers. Here's the National Desk's Angelo Brown.
Around 59 million Americans make some of their income as independent contractors. A new rule change could make some of those gig workers employees. The gig could be up for millions of independent contractors.
We got an order right here.
The Labor Department proposing changes that could make it more difficult for companies to classify workers as independent contractors. Leah Polagashvili, George Mason University.
The hope there is that that companies and organizations would reclassify those workers into employees.
Employees who could qualify for benefits. Labor Secretary Marty Walsh tweeting out, misclassification hurts workers by denying them important benefits and basic rights, such as a minimum wage and overtime pay. But business experts believe the move could backfire, pointing to studies that employees are much more expensive than independent contractors, up to 30% more. Dan Ives, Wedbush Securities, telling CNBC the proposal is a gut punch for the gig economy.
Worst case, it could increase costs based on analysis 20 to 30%. So that would change the business models upside down.
And young workers could be caught in the crunch. TeamStage says 38% of gig workers are between the ages of 18 and 34 and struggling. The Lending Tree reporting 32% of millennials and Gen Zers moved back home with their parents during COVID and still live there, now facing a possible recession.
We've seen some companies already engaging in hiring freezes and a little bit of news on the layoffs. So it does not seem wise right now to also implement a rule that might cut off contracting opportunities as well.
But the bark could be worse than the bite. Uber telling the AP the proposed rule takes a measured approach, essentially returning us to the Obama era, during which our industry grew exponentially. And Lyft says the rule does not reclassify Lyft drivers as employees. The new rule would change a Trump-era policy that lowered the bar for classifying workers as independent contractors. Reporting in Washington, D.C., I'm Angela Brown.
Angela, thank you. A new grading system under fire straight ahead. Critics concerned the new method to boost scores will cost students big. And neighbors helping neighbors for free. A new social media app connecting communities with those in need. The National Desk team of reporters bringing you the headlines from coast to coast. We're taking the pulse of America, starting in Florida, where a parent is suing the Palm Beach County School District after her son was the victim of a TikTok trend.
Josiah Garman says he didn't see it coming.
I just thought, there's no way this can be happening right now.
Back in March, the 13-year-old says he was humiliated and hurt just so that classmates could get more likes on TikTok.
They said that they wanted to record to see how high I could jump, but at the same time, the circle was formed and it was kind of weird.
Josiah would soon find out his classmates were attempting the Skullbreaker challenge.
And he jumps up in the air. They first tried to wrap a lanyard around his legs. I guess that was the first plan. But when that didn't work, he kicked his legs out from underneath him when he was in midair.
Video provided to us by the family's attorney shows just that, and the moment he came crashing down into the pavement, breaking his arm.
I looked at my arm and it was just completely deformed, and I was like, my arm is broken. It was so scary. And
Josiah's mother, Rachel Morgan, says they are now suing the Palm Beach County School District for allowing the TikTok challenge to happen. Attorney Patrick Lawler says the family is asking for more than $30,000 and questions why there was no nurse on campus at the time of the incident.
Over to California now, where a podcaster is joining forces with a Fresno Unified School District trustee candidate to fight the new way students are being graded. They claim equity grading, a strategy meant to minimize grading bias, is hurting students' reading, writing, and math comprehension. Students in the district already have low reading and math proficiency, and some fear it will only get worse.
A lot of people think that this is going to help students from disadvantaged backgrounds, but really in the long, it's a short-term gratification that we're giving students, and we're sacrificing long-term competence and confidence.
The author of Grading for Equity disagrees. He says the equity method limits race, socioeconomic, and gender bias by excluding non-academic criteria like not sitting still or not participating in class discussions. And in Utah, a new project aims to encourage community members to help each other without getting anything in return. Buy Nothing facilitates donations between people wanting to help and those in need. One of the co-founders says she was encouraged to start the project after noticing people's stuff polluting the water near her Seattle neighborhood.
Rather than throwing that thing away, actually give it, offer it up, post it, take a picture of it, and say, okay, does anybody want this?
The idea appears to be catching on. The Buy Nothing website currently has 6.5 million members. Impressive. Making sense of midterm election results, Jessica Taylor with the Cook Political Report gives her thoughts on the future of the Republican Party after a big win for Ron DeSantis on a disappointing night for Donald Trump. Not only were abortion rights protected most of the states with referendums, the issue may have decided candidate races across the country. Jessica Taylor, the Senate and Governor's editor for the Cook Political Report, spoke with our Eugene Ramirez.
Jessica, we talked last week about the abortion issue's momentum in the summer. Was this the big sleeper issue last night? And which races do you think it really swayed?
I think it did in Pennsylvania in both races. Josh Shapiro, the Democrat, now the Democratic governor-elect, was already favored there. But we saw in exit polls coming out of that Senate race that John Fetterman ended up winning over Dr. Mehmet Oz, that was a key issue. I still think it mattered more in some of these governor's races. And, we're waiting on final results in Arizona and Nevada. But states like Michigan, Wisconsin going for Democrats, and even states that Republicans had targeted that they feel like they fell short in. New Mexico was a top target of Republicans. The Democratic governor there ended up hanging on, and Republicans I've talked to today feel like abortion was an issue there.
Sure. And of course, again, like you mentioned, some races still pending. We'll see about those. But one race called early and by a very wide margin, Ron DeSantis in Florida, where Republicans flipped Miami-Dade County, and some in part crediting the many Venezuelan migrants now living there, ironically, after DeSantis paid to relocate Venezuelan migrants to northern states. Let's talk about Florida. Is it still a swing state?
I don't think it is. This state has very much changed since, it literally decided the presidential election in 2000 and had a Supreme Court case. We are seeing this move further and further in Republicans' direction, but even Republicans that were bullish about their chances in the state did not expect to see this margin. This was just a massive effort from DeSantis and clearly sets him up as he's eyeing 2024. He's one of the few places that really Republicans had a good night. They had such higher expectations for winning back the Senate, for having a bigger margin in the House. And of course, we don't have either of those fully decided yet. But Florida is the one state you can point to and say, Republicans did incredibly well here. And you're right, it does come down to Miami-Dade County, and that hasn't been flipped to red for about 2 decades now.
Yeah, pretty incredible to see that. DeSantis enjoying so much popularity there in the state. It'll be interesting to see how he would measure up in a potential presidential primary against Donald Trump, who, by the way, was hoping for some big wins for his candidates, the ones that he endorsed, instead facing some significant losses. Do you think Trump's support backfired for some of these candidates?
He did not help them by picking weak candidates. Clearly, even though the climate, the political environment should have favored Republicans, given the historic nature we see of midterms and the typical backlash to the president's party, that didn't happen here. I think Trump backed really weak nominees in Senate races, and you had Mitch McConnell that was very much worried about this thing. Again, it was not a good night for Donald Trump either, but can he be able to sort of sweep this under the rug, point his supporters elsewhere, especially as he's clearly teased an announcement, a potential presidential announcement next week. But it sort of is what is enough for people to sort of turn away from Trump and realize that since he was elected president, he's cost them the House and the Senate, and perhaps the Senate again.
Yeah, let's quickly, we have 20 seconds, but I want to get this in. The Georgia race is still outstanding. Warnock versus Walker. What do you think happens here?
It depends if this is for Senate control. I think all knives are out. If Republicans flip Nevada, then that would be the case, where they are leading right now, but we have outstanding ballots. But if Democrats run the table in both of those, then this would be a question of the 51st seat, and it wouldn't be for the majority. But I think it's going to be very close and ruin some people's Thanksgivings, probably mine included.
And yes, that's right. And stretching into December. Thank you so much, Jessica Taylor. Good to have you as always.
Thank you.
Yet another launch attempt delayed. The unforeseen circumstance that pushed back the takeoff of NASA's Artemis 1 shuttle. Taking a look at the top trending stories on our website right now, Oregon deputies brought a 75-year-old woman into custody after they say she was driving 112 miles per hour on the interstate. And a single Powerball lottery ticket purchased in Southern California won a record $2.04 billion from Monday's night's drawing after more than 3 months without a winner. And Office actor Rainn Wilson changed his name to Rainfall Heatwave Extreme Winter Wilson on social media to demand world leaders to take action on climate change. Those stories and much more available right now at thenationaldesk.com. Looking ahead to stories making headlines this week, President Biden will meet with the president of China at the G20 summit, which begins Tuesday. The leaders have not met in person since Biden became president. Plus, NASA's Artemis 1 rocket launch pushed to Wednesday due to Hurricane Nicole hitting Florida's East Coast. The next attempt at the uncrewed launch was set for Monday. Tech companies have led the way. Coming up, after massive layoffs, economy experts detail what happens to the industry could impact you. You're watching The National Desk, America's News Now. You can catch us live weekdays from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time. And anytime online at thenationaldesk.com. We'll be right back.
The National Desk, America's News Now.
This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Dee Gatton. Another social media platform under scrutiny. U.S. officials are issuing security warnings about TikTok. Many believe the Chinese-run app is collecting sensitive information from users all around the world. The National Desk, Christine Frizzell, explains what could be at risk.
These videos have made minutes turn into hours for more than 85 million Americans. With new warnings, they're capturing much more than our attention.
They are capturing literally down to the way that you use your keyboard. They are capturing your, in many cases, facial recognition.
Senator Mark Warner echoing concerns voiced for years by FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr, who in a letter asked Apple and Google to ban TikTok, which he says poses an unacceptable national security risk.
Thank you very much.
One reason why President Donald Trump tried to ban the app back in August of 2020, with an executive order calling the threat a national emergency. That action, though, blocked by federal judges, stating he was overstepping his authority.
These are words that would not normally come out of my mouth, but Donald Trump was right about TikTok.
TikTok concerns front and center at a recent Senate hearing.
Today, I will talk about one of the greatest technological threats facing our homeland security and democracy, TikTok, the social media app that reports to a nefarious Chinese company called ByteDance.
But as of now, ByteDance remains in final negotiations with the U.S. government, the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, or CFIUS, to allow TikTok to remain in use here, after officials there insisted all U.S. user data had been moved to a server run by the American company Oracle.
100% of our user data is now stored in
Oracle's cloud infrastructure, and we've further said that they will be vetting and validating our content moderation and recommendation systems.
It's a promise many in Washington say they don't buy. Arguing these short videos will bring long-term harm to hundreds of millions of Americans. I'm Christine Frizzell reporting for the National Desk, America's News Now.
Christine, thank you. Elon Musk issuing a dire warning to Twitter employees. The New York Times reports the new CEO at a recent meeting said Twitter doesn't have enough cash to survive and claims to have sold Tesla's stock to save the social media platform. This comes after he emailed Twitter workers ordering all remote employees back to the office and warning of difficult times ahead. In those emails seen by the Associated Press, Musk wrote in part, "Without significant subscription revenue, there's a good chance Twitter will not survive the upcoming economic downturn. We need roughly half of our revenue to be subscription." He's referring to Twitter Blue, a new subscription service which gives paying members the blue check mark once used to identify verified accounts. Facebook's parent company Meta is making major cuts, laying off more than 11,000 employees. The large-scale layoffs add up to about 13% of the social media company's workforce. In a letter to employees, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg said the cuts necessary as the company deals with a drop in revenue, the move coming just after Twitter's new owner, Elon Musk, announced widespread layoffs. Meta and Twitter, both big tech companies that have announced job cuts in a matter of weeks. A look at why this is happening and what it could mean for our economy. Professor of Management Dr. Christopher Kays says there have been sky-high expectations for growth in the past couple of years. Big companies like Twitter staffed up to meet demands. Now companies haven't achieved the growth, they don't have the funding, and are slashing jobs. At a lot of these firms, he notes reduced advertising spending, which is something these firms depend on. On the other side, real people losing their jobs. Microsoft had much smaller layoffs than other companies, but experienced them nonetheless. I spoke to Union Palenches, who works there, who knows people who were impacted.
I know someone who got laid off at Microsoft and was rehired on a different team. So, there's products that aren't working. They have to cut a whole product or a whole organization. And so they lay them off, but it doesn't mean that they don't want the employees. It's just that maybe that product's not working.
So these jobs will be redistributed to other areas. And so in some ways, it's going to take pressure off, say, for example, the Federal Reserve, who is really looking to lower the number of job openings out there. So what we'll probably see is a decrease in the number of job openings in the next couple of months.
The latest numbers show employers added more than 200,000 jobs in October. But Palenches worries about hiring freezes impacting people's ability to find work. Meantime, Kay says in the months to come, you could see some level of layoffs in tech spilling over into other industries. He says you could see people laid off moving to other sectors such as manufacturing. And InfoWars host Alex Jones has been ordered to pay another $473 million to Sandy Hook families. The new ruling against Jones and his company brings the total judgment to a staggering $1.44 billion. Jones repeatedly told his followers the deadly elementary school shooting was a hoax and grieving families were crisis actors. The judge imposed punitive damages, saying Jones's conduct was malicious and certain to cause harm. Jones called the latest award a joke and says he has little money to pay the damages. Latinos now make up nearly a fifth of the U.S. population and are the fastest growing racial and ethnic group in the U.S. electorate. So the Latino vote has become crucial in the battleground states. Founder of the Texas Latino Conservatives and former Harris County, Texas Treasurer Orlando Sanchez spoke to our Jan Jeffcoat about the impact he's had on midterms.
We know there's been some shifts of Latino voters toward the GOP. A Washington Post Ipsos poll said that if they had to choose, Hispanic voters said that 36% would support a Republican candidate, 63% said they would support a Democratic candidate, so still heavily on the Democratic side. Were Hispanic voting shifts, though, enough to turn some of these tight races in the GOP's favor when you think about how these numbers have shifted over the past few years? And what did you think about the turnout for Latino voters this election cycle?
Well, the Latino vote obviously is going to make an impact in tight races. What we're looking at in Texas, for example, is that the incumbent governor, Greg Abbott, held double-digit lead in spite of the fact that the Latino population in Texas is now a plurality. We're the largest ethnic group in the state of Texas. You look at Florida and the results there with Governor DeSantis. So the Latino vote is making an impact and especially in tight races. Even if you look at the congressional races in South Texas, where you had Mayra Flores, Cassie Garcia, Monica de la Cruz, Tony Gonzalez on the ballot, you see that Latinos were supporting, even though some of those races we lost, like the Mayra Flores race in the Congressional District 34, the support by the Latino community in those southern portions of Texas was pretty strong.
And according to Axios, a quarter of Latinos surveyed said neither Democrats nor Republicans are swaying them. So what is swaying them?
Well, economic opportunity, safe neighborhoods, access to education and healthcare. There's a myriad of issues in the Latino community. For example, here in my own state, obesity and a prevalence of type 2 diabetes. No one is addressing that in this state. From a healthcare perspective, we have rural parts of Texas that don't have good access to healthcare. It's very important for Latina moms. And as you know, Hispanic women are playing a huge role in the shift from liberal voting habits of the past and over to the GOP. So these are opportunities for Republicans to address the issues facing the Latino community. The Latino issues in Texas, for example, are different in rural Texas than they are in urban Texas. Right. I've always said to Republicans, figure out conservative solutions to urban problems and you'll start to shift urban areas of Texas.
Well, in Texas, you know, we saw, as you mentioned, Republican Mayra Flores lost her seat there, and she tweeted that Republicans and independents just didn't show up for her. So are Latino voters more likely to vote for a Latino regardless of whether they have a D or an R beside their name?
Not necessarily. I think that the Hispanic vote, the Latino vote, is looking for solutions to problems. And so maybe in the past, that would have been a fair statement. But today, I think they're looking for people and candidates that have solutions to their problems. And by the way, let me just say that Mayra Flores ran in a redistricted district that favored the Democrat by 14 points. She outperformed, right, losing in single digits instead. So frankly, she did quite well.
This is true.
Regardless of defeat.
This is true. What does the Latino voters' impact on Florida and Texas tell us about future U.S. elections? Do you see this being pivotal to what happens in Arizona?
No question. No question. And what you see is with the results in Ohio, the results in Texas, and the gains made in Florida, you have this triangle now of the upper Midwest, the lower Midwest, Texas, and Florida, moving solidly towards the Republican side. So this is pivotal for future elections in the United States. The challenge for the Republicans is to begin to come up with solid conservative solutions to problems affecting not only the Latino community, but urban America.
And some Republicans not seeing the election results they hoped for months. Experts predicted GOP domination. Our fact-check team looks at key reasons why some pollsters got it wrong.
That red wave we heard about for weeks from pundits and Republicans hyping up their own candidates and voters isn't exactly what the election results produced. In fact, Senator Lindsey Graham last night in an interview saying, quote, definitely not a Republican wave, that's for darn sure. I'm back with our fact-check team. Janae, what happened?
Eugene, according to the AP, abortion was a driving factor after Roe v. Wade was overturned a few months ago. Now, Democrats were able to leverage that decision. And President Biden also warned against right-wing extremists or MAGA conservatives, pointing to the January 6th attack on the Capitol. And an AP exit poll showed nearly 44% of voters said the future of democracy was their primary concern.
Now, for days, we also heard much about the economy that's driving voters to the polls. Just how big of a factor was that last night?
Right, so that same poll showed inflation was the top concern for voters. Republican politicians largely placed the blame on President Biden for high prices, but close to half of voters say the high prices were more because of factors outside of his control.
So what does this mean, Connor? Did the earlier polls get things wrong?
They're at least missing some of the picture. Now, we know the president's party almost always loses seats in the first midterms, and we also know the economy is a big issue. So pollsters argued that tight races nationwide meant there would be big wins for the GOP. But according to Grid News, if experts had looked closer at polling race by race, Republican victories weren't a sure thing. So it's not necessarily that the polls were wrong, but pundits didn't put enough weight on some of those factors that were so important in each of these tight races.
Lots of issues and different things move different people. Ladies, thank you. I know you'll continue to keep an eye on these tight races for us, many of them still pending, and we're going to break down the latest details on those races. They'll also share their resources with all of us on our website, thenationaldesk.com.
The FBI on the hunt for a bomber. Coming up, new video shows an explosive device set off at a controversial statue in a major city. And thieves becoming more brazen. A store owner sounds off on the out-of-control crime he's seen and why it surprised him. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. Our team of nearly 4,000 local journalists bringing you the headlines from coast to coast. We're taking the pulse of America, starting with an Alabama blood drive to help potential hurricane victims.
Hurricane Ian killing at least 125 people in 19 of Florida's counties and injuring many more. Blood supplies have been strained, and now another storm, Hurricane Nicole, is on its way.
Because of the storm that's headed towards Florida, we're asking donors here in Alabama to come in and donate blood with us so that we are able to help them.
Blood is necessary when it comes to saving people that have been affected by storms, from minor injuries to blood transfusions.
The communities in Florida, they're not going to be able to have, blood drives, and centers will probably have to close. So because of that, they won't have the blood supply that they need. We want to make sure that the blood is available.
There's a storm coming into Florida right now, and no telling what damage could be done down there or the needs that they have.
He's donated a whole pint of blood as quickly as 8 minutes.
It's the best thing you can do. You're helping so many people by doing that.
In this security camera video from Texas Public Radio headquarters, you see a man in a yellow shirt and cap walking up to the Lennon Mouse sculpture. He sets something down right underneath the chin. 6 minutes later, the explosion.
It was some kind of explosive device or material that was detonated.
It's still unclear what the device was made of, but investigators have ways to figure that out.
They'll be looking at retail stores, they'll be looking at the private sector partners to see if they can identify people that may have bought this material recently.
The FBI is now in charge of investigating what happened.
They shut down the street for a few hours, and we were just like, what's going on over here? Looks like it was a one-off event.
This art piece was installed in March, depicting former Soviet leader Vladimir Lenin with a small version of Chinese Chairman Mao on top of his head. People walking through the area told us they weren't surprised about the incident just because of this subject matter.
Whether or not the person's intentions were to hurt somebody doesn't matter, because when you're blowing things up, bad things happen.
Surveillance footage shows a man breaking into Napolitano's Brooklyn Pizza on East Street in Cranston.
I find it crazy that someone would try to do that, out front, not any care about anything. Somebody came up to this front window with some type of a tool, tried to open it, and then they smashed it and broke the glass and reached in and stole all my tablets for my orders and also took the change box and maybe $100.
Cameras at the convenience store next door also caught the suspect on camera before the break-in. They said he came inside the store to ask what time Napolitano's closed. Shortly after, Napolitano's cameras would catch him breaking in, with another camera showing him taking the cash and cash drawer. The loss and windows repair adds up to about $2,000.
If the guy wanted the money or whatever, I would loan him some money. You know, I mean, just leave my stuff alone, don't break it. That's the most frustrating part, you know. I mean, we're always hiring. He could have a job here if he wanted a job, if he was a decent person.
The expected red wave this midterm election looked like more of a splash. Still to come, how Republicans could switch it up their strategy for 2024 and who may be vying for the GOP nomination. A clearer picture of the midterm winners and losers is coming into view, and it has Republicans considering a more centrist approach for 2024, like outgoing Maryland Governor Larry Hogan. The National Desk Brad Bell explains the shift in strategy as some wait for Hogan to signal whether he's ready to run for president.
Outgoing term-limited Maryland Governor Larry Hogan has been hinting at a presidential run for more than 4 years. At times, such as when he visited the Iowa State Fair in August, he's looked very much like a candidate, all the while claiming he hasn't yet decided. Now, he says the results of the midterm elections offer encouraging signs.
We were wondering if there was a lane for my kind of politics. You know, I've got the most successful governor in America, but it still was a little bit outside of where most of the party was. I think that may have changed yesterday. I think the lane has broadened considerably.
Hogan has positioned himself as a centrist, a re-elected Republican governor in a firmly blue state with an approval rating of around 70%. He's won bipartisan praise for his handling of the pandemic. He's talked tough on crime, has been anti-tax and spend, but has mostly avoided hot-button social issues. He's also been anti-Trump, and the former president has called Hogan a terrible governor. Hogan now says that doesn't seem to matter as much as it did last week.
Nearly all of the kind of strongest MAGA candidates all lost nearly everywhere in the country, and it should have been a huge red wave because of the failures of the Biden administration. It is a real strong lesson for the Republican Party that continuing to double down on failure is not a long-term plan for success. No question I'm going to continue to be a part of the debate and the discussion, and I'm going to continue to do everything I can to get the country and the Republican Party back on the right track.
When asked directly if he will run for president, Governor Hogan, who today began the transition to his successor here in Maryland, continues to say there will be no announcement until his term is over in January. In Annapolis, Maryland, Brad Bell reporting.
No Republican has officially announced plans to run for president in 2024. But some prospects here rumored to be eyeing a bid also include Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, former Vice President Mike Pence, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and former UN Ambassador and South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley. College COVID booster push. Coming up next, big-name schools mandating the updated vaccine for students. The main factor driving universities to change their policies this fall. Republicans promised if they took control of Congress after midterm elections, they would dismantle any pandemic policies still in place. That would include ending the ongoing public health emergency and national emergency declaration, which could impact health care, student loans, and border security. GOP lawmakers looking to fully rescind the U.S. military's COVID vaccine mandate and will likely reject any additional requests for COVID funding. They also plan to investigate school closures and the origins of the virus. Meanwhile, a handful of universities are mandating the new COVID booster, setting off a fresh round of backlash. The National Desk's Angelo breaks down what the consequences students could face if they do not get the new booster.
4 words from the president those against vaccine mandates often point to.
Is the pandemic over? The pandemic is over.
But COVID still spreading. The CDC, 20% of counties at medium community spread, and some colleges still sticking to their pandemic playbook. Here's Harvard's updated guidelines requiring students to get the new COVID-19 booster or a hold will be placed on enrollment. College watchdog groups are saying, hold on.
Harvard is holding students' education hostage to force them to make a personal medical decision.
But it's not just Harvard requiring the new COVID booster, but also Yale and Fordham. Action colleges are taking, they believe, to look out for the health of students, mandating the new COVID booster that the CDC considers a game changer.
For the first time now, we have a shot that actually targets exactly the variants that we have circulating right now.
Just last week, Pfizer and BioNTech announcing the new booster provides better protection against COVID-19 variants, a factor for Fordham University. An official telling Inside Higher Ed the potential for a winter surge of Omicron and evidence the new booster significantly reduces the risk of transmission drove their decision. But some argue it's the students who should be in the driver's seat.
Students have the right to make medical decisions for themselves. They don't need a college administrator telling them what to do with their bodies and what choices to make concerning their own medical health.
Inside Higher Ed is reporting that fewer than 20 schools across the country have mandated the new COVID-19 booster this fall. In Washington, D.C., I'm Angela Brown.
Angela, thank you. This week, Washington, D.C.'s Attorney General filed a lawsuit against the Washington Commanders team owner Dan Snyder, the NFL, and League Commissioner Roger Goodell. The lawsuit alleges the defendants violated D.C.'s Consumer Rights Protection Act by hiding the truth from residents about the investigation into the team's toxic culture of sexual harassment, claiming that was done in order to protect profits. The AG is saying he will hold them accountable.
This case is going to require depositions, sworn testimony, and accountability from some of the most powerful men and organizations in the United States of America.
In a statement to The Hill, NFL spokesperson Brian McCarthy said, "We reject the legally unsound and factually baseless allegations made today by the D.C. Attorney General against the NFL and Commissioner Goodell and will vigorously defend against those claims." That'll be all for us on the weekend edition of the National Desk, America's News Now. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great weekend.